My name is Ella, and I am 31 years old. I remember the darkness floating in nothing for weeks. After a car accident left me broken, I was trapped in a coma. My body was shattered, but my mind slowly became aware. I could hear voices around my hospital bed. I heard my own family discussing whether to pull the plug. They called me a burden, a waste of money. They had no idea I was listening, and they had no idea about the $850 million. Before I tell you what happened, when I open my eyes, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from today. If you believe karma is real, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what my family did in that hospital room came back to haunt them in ways they never imagined. I need to take you back to the beginning, to the family I was born into, and the person I became despite them. The Prescotts of Greenwich, Connecticut were everything you imagine when you think of old money. Generational wealth passed down through decades. Country club memberships that cost more than some people's annual salaries. A sprawling estate with manicured lawns and a swimming pool that nobody ever used. My father, Richard Prescott, was 63 years old and had spent his career as an investment banker before retiring to manage the family's various holdings. He walked through life with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. My mother Judith was 61 and had perfected the art of being a socialite. She sat on charity boards, organized galas, and spent her days ensuring the Prescott name remained synonymous with respectability. Then there were my siblings. William was the eldest, at 35, the golden child who followed our father into finance without question. He wore expensive suits and spoke in numbers and percentages. Catherine was 33, beautiful in that polished way that comes from regular spa treatments and careful dieting. She married a wealthy surgeon named Garrett and lived exactly the life our parents designed for her. And then there was me, the accident. I was born when my parents were certain they were done having children. My mother was 40 when she discovered she was pregnant with me, and from the stories I pieced together over the years, she was not pleased. I came into this world as an inconvenience, and that label never quite left me. While my siblings attended prestigious prep schools with ivy-covered walls and legacy admissions, I was sent to public school. Budget cuts, they said, though the budget never seemed tight when Catherine needed a new car or William wanted to study abroad. While my siblings received vehicles for their 16th birthdays, I rode the bus. While they were praised and celebrated, I was barely acknowledged. Family dinners were the worst. We would sit around that enormous mahogany table, and the conversation would flow around me like water around a stone. William would discuss his stock portfolio and upcoming deals. Catherine would talk about society events and her social calendar. My parents would beam with pride at their accomplished children. When I tried to talk about my interest computers and coding and the technology that fascinated me, I was met with blank stares and quick subject changes. My father once looked at me across that table and said, "Why can't you be normal like your siblings?" The words cut deeper than he ever knew. My mother's advice was equally dismissive. "Ella dear, maybe focus on something practical. Find a nice husband who can take care of you." I learned early that I was on my own. Nobody in that house was going to champion my dreams or support my ambitions. If I wanted something, I would have to build it myself. At 14, I discovered programming. We had computer labs at my public school, and while other kids used the machines for games and social media, I was captivated by code. The logic of it, the way you could create something from nothing, using just your mind and a keyboard. I started teaching myself using library computers and free online resources. While my siblings were attending country club events, I was learning Python and JavaScript in the quiet corners of the public library. I had a natural talent for it. The languages came easily to me. The problem solving felt like breathing. By 16, I was building simple applications. By 18, I had earned a full scholarship to Carnegie Mellon University for computer science. My family did not attend my high school graduation. They had a prior engagement something at the country club. I walked across that stage alone, collected my diploma, and caught a bus home. It was fine. I was used to it by then. College was the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. Surrounded by people who spoke my language, who understood the beauty of elegant code and innovative solutions. I thrived there. made friends, discovered parts of myself that had been dormant in that cold Greenwich mansion. During my sophomore year, I started building apps in my dorm room. My first creation was a simple budgeting tool designed to help students manage their finances. I uploaded it to the App Store, expecting nothing, and within 3 months, it had generated $12,000 in revenue. I did not tell my family. They would have dismissed it, called it a distraction from finding a suitable husband. When I graduated, my family expected me to get what they called a real job, something respectable, preferably at a company where our family name carried weight. Instead, I told them I was working at a tech startup in Austin, Texas. This was technically true. I just did not mention that I had founded the startup. Whisper Technologies began in a tiny apartment with secondhand furniture and a laptop that overheated if I pushed it too hard. The focus was encrypted communication software for businesses, a solution to a problem I had identified during my college internships. Companies were hemorrhaging sensitive information through unsecured channels, and I knew I could build something better. I worked 18-hour days. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee. I poured every single penny back into the company because I believed in what I was building. Slowly, painfully, the company grew. I hired my first employee after 18 months. By year 3, we had 50 people working for Whisper. By year 5, 200 employees occupied a sleek office building in downtown Austin. The contracts started rolling in. Fortune 500 companies wanted our encryption. Government agencies came calling, impressed by our security protocols. The valuation climbed higher with each passing quarter. $850 million. That was what Whisper Technologies was worth when the accident happened. I owned 72% of the company. My personal net worth exceeded $600 million, and my family still thought I was some low-level employee at a struggling startup. I never corrected them. There was something satisfying about being underestimated, about knowing the truth, while they dismissed me at every holiday gathering. Let them think I was the family failure. Let them shake their heads and wonder where they went wrong with me. I knew what I had built, and that was enough. Then came March 15th, a rainy Tuesday evening that would change everything. I was driving home from a meeting with a potential acquisition partner. A major tech company had approached Whisper with an offer of $1.2 billion. They wanted to buy everything I had built, roll it into their existing infrastructure. It was a staggering amount of money, and I was genuinely considering whether to accept. My mind was occupied with the decision as I drove through the rain. The pros and cons spinning through my thoughts, the legacy I would leave behind versus the freedom the sale would bring. I did not see the truck running the red light. The impact hit my driver's side door. My car spun 3 times before coming to rest against a telephone pole. I remember the sound of shattering glass, the scream of metal bending in ways it was never meant to bend. I remember pain, brief and blinding. Then there was only darkness. I woke up in the darkness, but it was not the waking I had known before. My body was completely paralyzed. I could not move my fingers, could not open my eyes, could not speak or scream or do anything at all. But somehow impossibly I could hear. The doctors explained my condition to someone in the room. Severe traumatic brain injury, multiple fractures, including ribs, pelvis, and my left arm. They had induced a coma to reduce the swelling in my brain. "We'll know more in a few weeks," one of them said. "For now, we wait and hope." Then I heard voices I recognized, the footsteps of people I had known my entire life entering my hospital room. My family had come. But their words told me immediately that they had not come for the right reasons. "She looks terrible," my father said first. Not how is she, not will she be okay. Just an observation about my appearance delivered with evident distaste. "How long will this take?" My mother's voice came next, that practiced socialite tone with an edge of impatience underneath. The doctor said weeks, possibly months. Months. That was William, and I could hear the irritation clearly. "Who's going to pay for this?" Catherine chimed in with the question that defined everything. "Does she even have insurance?" I lay there in the darkness, my heart breaking in ways I could not express. These were the first words my family spoke about me. Not concern for my recovery, not prayers for my healing, only logistics money and the inconvenience I was causing them. My mother continued, her voice taking on that organizational tone she used when planning charity events. I suppose we'll have to handle her affairs. Someone should check her apartment, figure out her situation. William, can you look into it? My father asked. See what she has. William sighed heavily, as if this was an enormous burden being placed upon him. Fine. Probably just debt knowing Ella. She never was good with money. She always was hopeless, Catherine agreed. Remember when she asked Dad for a loan to start that computer thing years ago? My father made a dismissive sound. Don't remind me, glad I said no. Would have been throwing money away. They stayed for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of discussing themselves their schedules, the inconvenience of having to drive out to this hospital. They talked about the upcoming charity gala my mother was planning. They talked about William's latest deal. They talked about Catherine's anniversary party next month. Not once did they speak to me directly. Not once did anyone hold my hand or tell me they loved me or hoped I would recover. They filed out without saying goodbye, and I lay in the darkness feeling wounds rip open that I thought had scarred over years ago. Day 7 brought William back alone. I could hear him talking on his phone while standing somewhere near my bed, apparently unbothered by the fact that his comatose sister might be listening. Yeah, I went to her apartment, he was saying. Tiny place, nothing special, found some paperwork but couldn't make sense of most of it. Something about a company whisper something. Probably some failed startup. You know, Ella. I wanted to scream. That failed startup was worth almost $1 billion. That company I built from nothing had contracts with the Pentagon. But I could not move, could not speak, could only listen to my brother dismiss my entire life's work. Hospital is asking about payment, William continued. Her insurance covers some, but not all. Dad's furious about it. Says we shouldn't have to pay for her mistakes. I mean, who gets hit by a truck? She was probably on her phone like always. The phone call ended, and I heard him step closer to my bed. His voice was different now, still cold, but with something almost like resentment underneath. Ella, I don't know if you can hear me, but you really screwed up this time. Do you have any idea how inconvenient this is for everyone Catherine's anniversary party is next month? And Mom is stressed about that. And now we have to deal with this. With you. Like always. He left without another word, the door clicking shut behind him. Inconvenient. That was the word that echoed through the darkness. That was what I was to my family. An inconvenience they had been tolerating for 31 years. And now lying broken in a hospital bed, I was finally too much trouble to bear. Day 12 brought them all together. All 4 of them in my room at once, which I realized was the first time that had happened since I was admitted. The doctor had just left after giving them an update. I was stable, but showing no signs of waking. It could be weeks, more could be months. There was a small chance I might never wake up at all. We need to discuss options, my father said, and something in his tone made my blood run cold. If I could have shivered, I would have. What options? My mother asked. She's in a coma, Richard. There aren't exactly many choices here. Financial options, he clarified. This is costing a fortune. The hospital bills are already astronomical, and we have no idea how long this will continue. William spoke next. I looked into her situation more thoroughly. She has minimal savings from what I can tell. Some stock in a company, but it's probably worthless. That startup she worked for was clearly going nowhere. So she really has nothing? Catherine sounded almost satisfied, as if my financial failure confirmed everything she had always believed about me. Typical Ella. Always the burden. Even now she can't stop being a problem. My mother's voice dropped to something more thoughtful, more dangerous. Should we consider moving her to a less expensive facility? Somewhere more appropriate for her situation? Or, my father said, and the pause that followed stretched into an eternity, we discussed the alternative. The silence in the room was absolute. Even in my darkness, I could feel the weight of what he was suggesting settling over everyone. You mean, Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. The doctor said there's a chance she never wakes up. My father continued, his tone businesslike, as if discussing quarterly projections rather than his daughter's life. If she has no quality of life ahead, is it fair to keep her suffering? And frankly, is it fair to drain family resources on a lost cause? My mind screamed in the darkness. They were talking about letting me die, about pulling the plug on their inconvenient daughter, about ending my life because I was too expensive to keep alive. "We'd need to be listed as decision makers," William said, and I heard the calculator clicking in his brain. Always the financial analyst. "She doesn't have a healthcare proxy on file." "Then we petition for guardianship," my father replied without hesitation. "As her immediate family, we have legal standing. I'll have my lawyer start the paperwork tomorrow." Catherine spoke again, and for one brief moment I thought I heard doubt in her voice. "This feels wrong, doesn't it? Making this decision for her." But my mother crushed that doubt immediately. "Catherine, be practical. What kind of life would she have even if she wakes up? She had nothing before the accident. She would have nothing after. We'd be taking care of her forever, and none of us signed up for that." The silence stretched again, and then Catherine said the words that sealed my resolve. "I suppose you're right." "I'll call the lawyer first thing in the morning," my father confirmed. "The sooner we get this sorted, the better for everyone." They filed out of my room discussing dinner plans, where they would eat, what wine they would order, whether the restaurant took reservations this late. My life was being scheduled for termination, and they were worried about getting a good table. Something crystallized in that darkness. Something hard and bright and absolutely certain. I would not let them kill me. I would wake up from this coma. And when I did, everything would change. The battle to return began in earnest on day 14. I focused every ounce of willpower I possessed on the smallest possible movements. A finger twitch, an eyelid flutter. Anything that would prove I was still in here, still fighting. The darkness was my enemy and my companion. I had nothing but my thoughts, my memories, and my absolute determination to survive. I replayed everything I had built with Whisper Technologies. Every late night, every difficult decision, every moment of triumph. I thought about the employees who depended on me, the products we had created, the future we were building together. I thought about my family, but not in the way they might expect. I did not think about proving myself to them or earning their love. That ship had sailed long ago. I thought about them only as motivation. They wanted me dead. They would not get their wish. Around day 18, I felt something change, a connection forming between my intention and my physical body. I focused everything on my right index finger, imagining the nerves firing, the muscles contracting. And then, after what felt like hours of concentration, it moved. The nurse noticed immediately. I heard her sharp intake of breath, heard her call for the doctor. "She's showing purposeful movement. This is very positive." Day 20 brought more progress. My eyelids began to flutter, responding to light for the first time. The medical team was encouraged, their voices taking on a hopeful tone that had been absent before. Day 21 changed everything. I opened my eyes. The world was blinding and blurry and absolutely beautiful. I was alive. I was awake. I had won. There was a tube down my throat preventing speech, but the doctors understood. They had tests to run, assessments to make. Hours later, the tube was removed, and I spoke my first words in 3 weeks. "Water," I croaked, and the nurse helped me drink. My throat felt like sandpaper, but the cool liquid was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. Then I said my second words, and they were more important than the first. "No family, don't call them." The medical team exchanged glances. This was unusual, clearly, but I was conscious and competent, and they respected my wishes. No calls were made to Greenwich. I needed time, time to heal, time to plan, time to prepare for what came next. Calling my family would only complicate everything. The first call I made was to Marcus, my assistant at Whisper Technologies. He had been with the company since year 2, and over the years had become more than an employee. He was 34 years old, brilliant at operations, and completely loyal to the vision we shared. His voice cracked when he heard mine. "Ella, we've been going crazy here. The board has been managing things, but everyone's worried sick. We didn't know if you were going to make it." "I'm okay," I said, though my voice was still weak. "I'm going to be okay. But Marcus, I need you to do something important for me." "Anything, name it. I need complete information locked down about my condition and location. Nobody outside the company knows anything. Not the press, not business contacts, and especially not anyone claiming to be family." "Understood." There was a pause. Marcus knew my family situation in broad strokes, knew there was distance there, but he had never asked for details. Of course, Ella, total lockdown, but I should tell you your brother called the office last week. My stomach tightened. What did he want? He was asking about your employment status and company shares. Wanted to know about your position here. We told him nothing. Privacy policy and all that. He seemed frustrated. I smiled, and it hurt my face in ways that confirmed I was healing. Good. Keep it that way. I'll be in touch soon. The second call was to Diana Walsh, my personal attorney. Diana was 52 years old and sharp as a surgical blade. She had protected my interests since Whisper's first major contract, and I trusted her completely. Ella. The relief in her voice was palpable. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. When we heard about the accident, I know. I'm sorry for the worry. But, Diana, I need your help immediately. Full legal protection across the board. I want my healthcare proxy updated within 24 hours. I'm removing all family members from any decision-making capacity over my medical care or anything else. Done. What else? I need you to find out if my family filed any guardianship petitions while I was unconscious. The pause on her end told me everything. They did. Last week. There's a hearing scheduled for next month. They claimed you were permanently incapacitated and couldn't manage your own affairs. My jaw tightened. Get it dismissed. Now that I'm conscious and competent, they have no case. I'll file the motion immediately. But Ella, Diana's voice shifted, becoming more careful. Don't you want me to inform them you're awake? They are your family. They're the people who were planning to let me die because I was too expensive to keep alive. So no, Diana, don't tell them anything. I want to know exactly what they were planning before I make my next move. Understood. I'll have the dismissal filed by end of day and the new healthcare documents ready for signature by tomorrow morning. The next 2 weeks were a blur of physical recovery and strategic planning. My body healed faster than the doctors expected, which they attributed to my youth and overall health. What they did not know was that I had a deadline in mind, a target that was driving my rehabilitation. Catherine's anniversary party was in 3 weeks. 200 of Connecticut's finest families would be in attendance. It was the perfect venue for what I had planned. Diana's investigation revealed details that confirmed my worst suspicions about my family's behavior during my coma. The guardianship petition my father's lawyer filed was comprehensive. It requested authority not just over medical decisions, but over all my financial affairs. They wanted complete control of everything I owned, though they had no idea what that actually meant. William had visited my apartment twice while I was unconscious. The second time he took documents. Corporate paperwork he could not understand but suspected might be valuable. My landlord confirmed he had been asking questions about my lease, my belongings, whether I had any assets that might cover what he called accumulated debts. Catherine had been telling extended family that I was brain dead. Just a matter of time before we have to let her go, was the phrase she used repeatedly. So sad, but she never really had much of a life anyway. My mother had already started donating my belongings to charity. Cleaning out her place to save on rent, she explained to relatives. As if I was already gone. As if they had already won. Each revelation was a fresh wound, but also fresh fuel. These people had never loved me. They had tolerated me when I was invisible, and decided to eliminate me when I became inconvenient. The only thing I regretted was taking so long to see them clearly. I made one more call before leaving the hospital, to the party planner handling Catherine's anniversary celebration. She was an old family friend who had always been kind to me, even when my own relatives were not. Ella, she exclaimed when she heard my voice. We heard you were… your family said, reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, I said, allowing a hint of dark humor into my tone. I'd like to make a surprise appearance at Catherine's party, and I'd like to make a small speech. Can you arrange that? The party planner was silent for a moment, clearly sensing there was more to this story than she understood. But she had always liked me, and my request was simple enough. Consider it done, she said finally. I'll make sure you're on the list and that there's a microphone waiting when you're ready. Perfect. I also contacted a Forbes reporter who had been requesting an interview with me for over a year. She wanted to do a profile on female founders in tech, and I had always declined due to privacy concerns. Now, however, I had a very specific reason to say yes. I'm ready to do that interview, I told her, but I have a specific publication date in mind, and the story is going to be more personal than you might expect. The pieces were falling into place. My family had no idea what was coming. They were still trying to contact me through every channel they could think of, still believing I was their burden to dispose of. They had no idea the burden was about to become their reckoning. 3 days before Catherine's anniversary party, William finally figured it out. He had taken those corporate documents from my apartment, thinking they might reveal some hidden asset he could claim on behalf of the family. What he found instead was evidence of something he never could have imagined. I learned later through Diana's connections and some careful information gathering exactly how the revelation unfolded. William had shown the documents to a friend who worked in venture capital, someone who understood startup valuations and equity structures. William, his friend had said, voice tight with disbelief, "Do you know what Whisper Technologies is? This company has contracts with the Pentagon. They're being valued at almost $1 billion. That's impossible, William had replied. Ella works there as some kind of secretary or something. She's always been useless at business. According to these documents, Ella is the company. She's the founder and majority shareholder. Her stake alone is worth over $600 million. William went pale. His hands started shaking. Everything he thought he knew about his disappointing little sister was crumbling around him. He called our father immediately. "Dad, we have a situation. We need a family meeting tonight." Within hours, all four of them were gathered at the Greenwich estate. William presented his findings, while the others sat in stunned silence. I would have given anything to see their faces in that moment. "There has to be a mistake," Catherine said finally. "Ella doesn't have that kind of business sense." "I've been researching all day," William replied. "It's real. Forbes did a brief mention of her last year in an article about rising tech companies. She's apparently brilliant. The company is her design from scratch." My father's face underwent a transformation. I could picture it perfectly. The dismissive condescension shifting to calculation. The realization that the daughter he was ready to let die was worth more than all of them combined. "We need to reach out to her immediately," he said. "Tell the hospital to move her to the best room, get her the best doctors. Money is no object." My mother nodded rapidly, her socialite instincts kicking in. "We should have been more supportive. We should have recognized her potential." "I always said she had talent," Catherine added, apparently forgetting every dismissive comment she had ever made about me. "There's one problem," William interrupted, his voice tight. "I called the hospital. She was discharged 2 weeks ago. Nobody knows where she is. And according to the medical staff, she's conscious and competent." The silence that followed must have been deafening. "Conscious," my father repeated. "Since when?" "They wouldn't give details. Patient privacy. But they confirmed she signed herself out and explicitly requested no contact with family members. Which means," my mother said slowly, horror dawning, "she knows. About the guardianship petition. About everything." "And our petition is dead in the water," my father confirmed. "You can't claim someone is incapacitated when they're clearly not." I imagine panic set in around then. The daughter they were ready to kill was alive, aware, and sitting on a fortune. Everything they had said and done during those weeks was coming back to haunt them. The next 72 hours were a frenzy of activity on their end. My father called Whisper Technologies dozens of times, demanding to speak with me, insisting that he was Richard Prescott, my father, that this was a family emergency. The receptionist, well trained by Marcus, was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Prescott. Ms. Prescott is unavailable and has requested no calls from family be transferred." My mother tried my cell phone obsessively, not realizing I had changed the number. William attempted LinkedIn, personal email, every professional contact he could find. All blocked or redirected. Catherine took to social media, posting saccharine messages about family unity and support. "So grateful my baby sister is recovering. We've been by her side through this whole ordeal. Family is everything." The comments from extended relatives were sympathetic. "So glad the family is supporting her. Sending prayers for Ella." None of them knew the truth. Not yet. I screenshot every post, every comment, every piece of evidence of their hypocrisy. Diana was building a file just in case. My father finally managed to reach Marcus through business channels. I listened to the recording later courtesy of our excellent security protocols. Mr. Prescott, Marcus said, his voice professionally cold. I can confirm that Ms. Prescott is recovering well from her accident. However, she has requested no contact with family members at this time. There's been a misunderstanding, my father said, and I could hear the desperation beneath his authoritative tone. We love our daughter. We've been worried sick about her. With all due respect, Sir Ms. Prescott has made her wishes very clear. If that changes, she has your contact information. Marcus hung up, and I smiled when I heard the click. They were learning what it felt like to be dismissed, to be pushed aside, to have doors closed in their faces. They were experiencing, for perhaps the first time in their privileged lives, what it meant to want something and be told no. And the party had not even started yet. Catherine's anniversary celebration was everything a Greenwich Society event should be. The grand ballroom at the country club was transformed into an elegant wonderland of crystal chandeliers, white flowers, and tasteful gold accents. 200 of Connecticut's finest families were in attendance, dressed in their designer best, ready to celebrate 10 years of matrimony between Catherine Prescott and Dr. Garrett Harrison. I watched the festivities begin from a private room in the back, courtesy of the party planner who had kept my presence a secret. I could see my family through the crack in the door playing their parts perfectly. My father, the distinguished patriarch. My mother, the gracious hostess. William networking with potential business contacts. Catherine glowing in her designer gown, Garrett at her side, the picture of marital bliss. None of them mentioned me in their speeches. The toast to the happy couple contained no reference to the sister who was supposedly recovering from a near-fatal accident. It was as if I did not exist, which I suppose was how they had always preferred it. I had dressed carefully for this evening. Nothing flashy or ostentatious. A simple emerald green dress that fit perfectly elegant heels, minimal jewelry. I wanted to look like myself, like the woman I had become through my own efforts. The months of physical therapy had restored my strength, and while I still had occasional headaches and my left arm was not quite as strong as before I moved with confidence, I waited until the party was in full swing. Dinner had been served, champagne had flowed, and the crowd was loose and happy. The perfect moment for a surprise entrance. The main doors opened and I walked through. The effect was immediate. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Every eye in the room turned to watch as Ella Prescott, the family burden, the woman they thought was brain dead, walked calmly through the parted crowd. Catherine dropped her champagne glass. It shattered against the marble floor, sending crystal shards and expensive wine scattering across her designer shoes. My mother gasped audibly, one hand flying to her chest. My father's face drained of all color white as the tablecloths around us. William froze mid-handshake with some business associate, his mouth hanging open. I walked toward them with measured steps, letting the silence stretch, letting everyone in the room absorb the reality of my presence. Catherine, I said when I reached her, my voice warm and steady. Garrett, congratulations on your anniversary. 10 years is a wonderful milestone. Catherine's mouth opened and closed several times before words emerged. Ella, you're here. I apologize for the surprise, I continued. I wasn't sure if I could make it, given that 2 months ago I was in a coma, and certain family members were discussing whether to end my life to save on hospital bills. The murmurs started immediately. 200 pairs of eyes shifted between me and my family, sensing blood in the water. Ella, sweetheart, my mother said, finding her voice and her damage control instincts simultaneously. Let's talk privately. There's been some miscommunication. Actually, I said, turning to face the crowd, I think it's time our family talked publicly. You've been telling everyone a story, Mother. I think they deserve to hear the truth. The party planner appeared at my elbow, microphone in hand, exactly as arranged. I took it with a nod of thanks and stepped onto the small stage that had been set up for toasts. Good evening, everyone, I said, my voice carrying through the ballroom speakers. For those who don't know me, I'm Ella Prescott, the youngest of the Prescott children, or as my family privately calls me, the burden, the failure, the inconvenience. The room was absolutely silent. Even the staff had stopped moving. 2 months ago, I was in a terrible car accident. The injuries were severe: traumatic brain injury, multiple fractures. I was placed in a medically induced coma, and while I lay unconscious in that hospital bed, I could hear everything that happened around me. I saw my family's faces shift from shock to horror as they realized where this was going. I heard my family discuss how expensive my care was. I heard them complain about the inconvenience of having to deal with me. I heard them plan to petition for legal guardianship so they could make medical decisions on my behalf. My father tried to speak, but I continued over him. And I heard them discuss whether my life was worth saving at all. Spoiler alert, they decided it wasn't. They were going to let me die, their own daughter, their own sister, because they thought I was worthless, a nobody with nothing to contribute. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People were looking at the Prescotts with new eyes, with judgment beginning to form. They were wrong. I paused, letting the moment build. Most of you in this room are familiar with Whisper Technologies, the cybersecurity company that has contracts with Fortune 500 corporations and government agencies. The company valued at $850 million. More murmurs, more exchanged glances. I founded that company. I built it from nothing in a tiny apartment in Austin, while my family dismissed me as a failure. I own 72% of the shares, and tonight Forbes is releasing a cover story about my journey. I turned to look directly at my family, including the part about how my own relatives abandoned me when I was at my most vulnerable, how they were ready to let me die, how they only changed their tune when they discovered my net worth. Catherine started crying. "This was my party. How could you do this to me?" "How could I do this to you?" I repeated, and for the first time allowed my anger to surface. "How could you tell everyone I was brain dead while planning my funeral? How could you donate my belongings while I was still alive? How could you discuss ending my life because I was too expensive to keep breathing?" She had no response. None of them did. "I don't share this for sympathy," I said, turning back to the crowd. "I share it because the truth deserves to be heard. Because too many people suffer in silence from family betrayal, believing they're alone, believing they're the problem. You're not the problem. Sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones least capable of it." I handed the microphone back to the party planner. "Thank you all for your time. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. I believe the cake is excellent." And with that, I walked out of the ballroom, leaving destruction in my wake. The party I heard later effectively ended within the hour. Nobody was in the mood to celebrate Catherine's marriage after what they had witnessed. The Forbes article went live at midnight exactly as planned. The story spread across social media like wildfire, shared and reshared by thousands of people who saw themselves in my story. The underestimated child, the dismissed family member, the one who was never good enough. The Prescott reputation built over generations of careful social climbing and strategic networking crumbled in the span of 48 hours. The fallout was swift and merciless. My father's remaining business connections began distancing themselves immediately. Phone calls went unanswered. Meeting requests were declined. The country club, the bastion of Greenwich respectability, quietly suggested that the Prescott family might want to take a break from events until things settled down. My mother's charity board asked for her resignation within the week. The official reason was vague, something about new directions and fresh leadership, but everyone knew the truth. Judith Prescott was toxic, now her carefully cultivated image, as the perfect society mother destroyed by her own daughter's testimony. Catherine's surgeon husband Garrett began facing uncomfortable questions at the hospital. His colleagues, his patients, everyone wanted to know if he had been part of the plan to abandon a dying woman. The association alone was damaging his reputation. Williams' finance firm conducted what they called a routine review of his position. 2 weeks later, he was offered a reduced role at significantly lower compensation. "Take it or leave it," they said. He took it because the alternative was worse. And through it all, my family tried desperately to reach me. The first week was letters and phone calls. My father showing up at my hotel causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted him out. My mother sending 14 pages of excuses and explanations that I read once and filed for legal records without response. William tried a business approach, sending a formal proposal about family investment in Whisper Technologies. "Blood is thicker than water," he wrote. "We should be united." Diana responded on my behalf that I was not interested in business discussions with family members at this time or any time. Catherine went for emotional manipulation on social media, posts about healing and reconciliation, about the bonds that could never be broken between sisters. The comment sections destroyed her. People who had read the Forbes article were not fooled by her performance. They remembered what she had said in that hospital room. They remembered that she had donated my belongings while I was still alive. I maintained complete silence toward all of them. No responses to letters, no return calls, no acknowledgement of any kind. Silence, I discovered, was sometimes the most powerful statement a person could make. It said everything that words could not. It said, "I see you clearly now." It said, "You cannot hurt me anymore." It said, "You no longer exist in my world." The legal protections were established quickly and comprehensively. Diana was thorough as always. My healthcare proxy was updated to exclude all family members explicitly. My will was rewritten so that not a single penny would go to any Prescott but me. My corporate structure was reviewed to ensure there was no possible avenue for family interference. I also began building connections with people who had shown up when it mattered. Marcus became more than an assistant. He had visited me in the hospital when no one else from my life bothered to come. He had protected my company and my privacy without being asked. Over dinners and long conversations, we developed a friendship built on mutual respect and shared values. Diana was another pillar. She had worked tirelessly to protect my interests, yes, but she had also called just to check on me, to see how I was healing, to remind me that legal protection was important, but emotional protection mattered too. My physical therapist, Raphael, had pushed me through the darkest moments of recovery. When my body screamed in protest and my mind wanted to give up, he had been there with encouragement and expertise. Now, months later, we still met weekly for coffee. New friendships emerged as well. At a tech conference 6 months after the party, I met Naomi. She was 35, founder of her own startup, and had a similar story of being underestimated by a family that never understood her ambitions. We connected immediately. "My parents told me tech wasn't for women," she said over drinks after a panel discussion. "I proved them wrong. Sounds like you did too." I nodded, finding comfort in shared experience. Sometimes the best motivation is someone telling you that you can't. We became close friends, the kind who could call each other at midnight with a problem and know we would be heard. The kind of friend I had never had growing up in that cold Greenwich mansion. I also reconnected with Sierra, my college roommate who had drifted away during my marriage of time and attention to whisper. She had always wondered why my family was so distant, why I never went home for holidays, why I never spoke about them with warmth. "They didn't deserve you," she said when I finally told her the full story. "They never did. I'm just sorry it took something so terrible for the world to see it." And then there was James. Dr. James Wheeler was the neurologist who had consulted on my case during the coma. He was 34 years old, specialized in traumatic brain injuries, and had been instrumental in my recovery. After I was discharged, he had reached out to check on my progress. "Professional courtesy," he said, "follow-up care." But the calls became longer. The topics wandered beyond medical matters. He asked about my company, my life, my interests. I asked about his work, his background, why he had chosen neurology. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into long walks through Boston. Long walks turned into something neither of us expected. "I liked you when you were a patient in a hospital gown," he said one evening about 8 months after my accident. "The billions are just extra. Kind of irrelevant, actually." He was kind without being weak, brilliant without being arrogant, and completely unintimidated by my success, which was rarer than I would have imagined. So many people saw the money first and the person second. James saw me. We took things slowly, both of us cautious from past experiences. But for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely seen and valued. Not for what I could provide or what I represented, just for who I was. The final chapter of my story with the Prescotts came in two unexpected moments. The first was a letter from Great Aunt Margot, my father's aunt who was 82 years old and had always been the family eccentric. She called me out of the blue, her voice trembling with age and emotion. Ella, I read that article. Every word of it. And I am so terribly sorry for what my nephew and his family did to you. Thank you, Aunt Margot. That means more than you know. I always knew Richard was cold, she continued. He was raised by emotionally distant parents, and he passed that pattern to his own children. But this, abandoning you in a hospital, talking about letting you die, this is unconscionable even for him. She shared family history I had never known. Generations of emotional dysfunction passed down like a genetic disorder. Not an excuse, she emphasized, but a context. The Prescotts had been broken long before I was born. You were never the problem, Ella. The brokenness existed before you, and would have existed without you. I'm just sorry you paid the price for our family's failures. I stayed in touch with Margot after that. She was the one decent branch on a poisoned tree, and I valued her honesty and her willingness to see clearly what others refused to acknowledge. The second unexpected moment came 18 months after Catherine's party. A letter arrived handwritten from my mother, not the 14 pages of excuses from before. This was shorter, different in tone. I almost threw it away without reading, but something made me pause. Ella, it began. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. I read on, curious despite myself. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I failed so completely as a mother. The answer is shameful, and I need you to hear it from me. I was jealous of you. You were unexpected, yes, but you were also brilliant from the moment you could speak. You saw the world differently than I did, understood things that confused me, had ambitions I couldn't comprehend, and I didn't know how to nurture something I couldn't understand. So I dismissed it, dismissed you. It was easier than admitting my own inadequacy. Your father is still angry. He sees what happened as a betrayal, not a consequence. But I am ashamed. There's a difference. I don't ask for anything. I don't expect a response. I just needed you to know the truth. I loved you in my way, which was broken and insufficient. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I'm sorry, Ella. Truly and completely sorry. I read the letter 3 times, feeling emotions I had not expected. Not forgiveness exactly. The wounds were too deep for that, at least for now. But something like acknowledgement. Recognition that my mother was human, damaged, complicated. That her failures, while inexcusable, came from her own limitations rather than any flaw in me. I showed the letter to my therapist, Dr. Angela Morrison, who had been helping me process the family trauma for over a year. What do you want to do with this? She asked. I thought carefully before answering. Nothing right now. Maybe someday I'll respond. But I'm not ready, and that's okay. Healing doesn't happen on anyone's timeline but my own. She nodded approvingly. That's exactly right. You get to decide when and if reconciliation happens. No one else. 2 years after the accident, I found myself sitting on the rooftop garden of my brownstone in Boston. The spring evening was gentle. The city sounds muted below stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. James was inside making tea, a ritual we had developed over our months together. I thought about everything that had happened since that rainy Tuesday when a truck ran a red light, the darkness of the coma, the horror of hearing my family discuss my death, the battle to wake up, the confrontation at Catherine's party, the rebuilding of my entire life from the ground up. Whisper Technologies had gone public 9 months earlier. The IPO exceeded all expectations, and my personal net worth now exceeded $1.6 billion. But sitting here watching the stars appear, I did not think about money. I thought about the girl in the coma who heard her family give up on her. And I thought about the woman who woke up and chose to live differently. I had learned things in those dark weeks that I carry with me still. Your worth is inherent, not earned, not conditional, not dependent on anyone's recognition. I spent years trying to achieve enough to matter to my family, building a company that proved my value in ways they could not ignore. But the truth is that I mattered before any of that. I mattered when I was a lonely child ignored at the dinner table. I mattered when I was a teenager teaching herself to code in the public library. I mattered when I was a young woman eating ramen in a tiny apartment dreaming of something bigger. Their inability to see my worth was never my flaw. It was theirs. Family is not defined by blood. It is defined by behavior. The people who show up in your darkness are your real family. The ones who only appear in your light were never family at all. Marcus showed up. Diana showed up. Raphael and Naomi and Sierra showed up. James shows up every single day. Building chosen family is not a consolation prize for losing your biological one. It is often the greatest gift of a difficult journey. The love I have found with people who chose me is deeper and more authentic than anything I ever experienced in that Greenwich mansion. Betrayal reveals, but it does not have to destroy. What my family did in that hospital room revealed who they truly were. It hurt beyond words to accept that truth. The illusion I had carried that someday they would see me and love me properly was shattered completely. But accepting that truth was the foundation of genuine healing. You cannot recover from wounds you refuse to acknowledge. Speaking truth is an act of self-respect. I could have stayed silent after waking up, could have protected the family image, let them rewrite the narrative, pretend none of it happened. But silence would have protected my abusers at the expense of my own integrity. The truth set me free, even though it burned bridges I had been crossing my whole life. Some bridges need to burn. James came outside with 2 cups of tea, settling into the chair beside me. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the last light fade from the sky. "What are you thinking about?" he asked eventually. "About how different life is than I expected," I said. "When I was young, I thought being rich meant being loved. That if I achieved enough, accumulated enough success, my family would finally see me as worthy. And now I know that love and money are completely separate things. You can have billions and be bankrupt in connection, or have nothing and be wealthy in the ways that matter." He took my hand, and the warmth of his grip was more valuable than any number in any bank account. "Which are you?" he asked softly. I smiled, feeling the peace that had taken so long to find. "I'm the lucky one. I have both. But if I had to choose, I would choose this. This rooftop, this tea, your hand in mine. The company could disappear tomorrow, and my worth wouldn't change. I know that now." We sat together as the stars multiplied above us, and I felt something I had never felt as a child in Greenwich: home. If you are watching this and you feel invisible to your family, I need you to hear me. If you are the black sheep, the forgotten one, the burden they wish they didn't have to carry, please listen. Their inability to see you is not your flaw. It is their limitation. You are worthy of love exactly as you are. You do not need to build an $850 million company to prove it, though if you do, make sure it is for yourself. Not for them, never for them. My family abandoned me in a coma. They discussed my death like a budget line item, an expense to be eliminated. But in that darkness, I found something they never had and never will. I found myself, and myself was worth waking up for. I want to ask you something before you go. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? How did you prove them wrong? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they are not alone. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video, and share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth is not determined by the people who refuse to see it. Thank you for watching, for listening, for being part of this community. I hope wherever you are, whatever darkness you might be facing, you remember that you have the power to wake up and choose a different path. You are not a burden. You are not a failure. You are not whatever limiting label someone else tried to attach to you. You are worthy. You always were. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, the people who truly love you will never make you question your value.